On today's show, we wind the clock back to August 1998 for a little slice of Australian motor racing history. We head to the much-loved and long-missed Amaroo Park Raceway in northwestern Sydney, where we look back on the final ever meeting of this iconic venue, known affectionately as Goodbye Amaroo. It's a nostalgic look back that features some really cool cars and some fantastic on-track action. This is Speedweek.
Amaroo Park in Sydney has been a source of motor racing enjoyment for many people over a period of about 30 years. The ARDC has now transferred its operations to Eastern Creek, and this tape is a historical record of the last race meeting held at the venue. Goodbye Amaroo, but goodbye race car. Gerard Gotch got himself in all sorts of trouble in the sports sedan race. Quite a nasty ride for him. Fortunately, A-OK, but the car a wreck. Let's look at it on replay. Tags with another competitor, goes around, up and over, and now the car's airborne, hasn't washed off any speed, goes into the tyres hard. What a wild ride for Gerard Gotch. And unfortunately, quite a sad story to go with this one as well.
"17 years since I raced here, and we decided to rebuild this car in the last 4 months for this race. And my boys put a lot of work and a lot of hours into it. And it's just a shame that it's came to this conclusion.
17 years ago, what were you racing here 17 years ago?
This car, yeah, we originally started out as a rallycross car at Catalina Park, and when it folded up, we converted it to sports sedan, and I ran it here, and then we put it away for a number of years and decided to resurrect it just for this race meeting.
Now, Jerry, it was a very big accident. What was going through your mind when it started to occur?
Well, it happened that quick. That came out of the loop, and it's what, 7 grand in 4th gear, which is about 170 kilometres an hour, and as we came into the next bend I got hit from behind, and within the next few seconds I knew there was nothing you could do. It was just into the wall, and that was the end of the story.
Now, how do you feel? Any aches and pains after a big shunt like that?
No, come out of it very well. A little bit of a sore neck, but that's only minor, and no, the roll cage, all the safety equipment did the job. I've walked away, not a problem.
Back at Amaroo Park for the Sports Sedan Trophy Race, and on pole position we have Joe Sade in the Fiat 124 with, would you believe it, a triple rotor rotary engine. Had a lot of trouble with noise in qualifying, had to stick a fair bit of material up the exhaust pipe of the thing to make it a little bit quieter. Let's see what it does to the performance. Second row of the grid, we've got Bill Harris and Bill Nabham. Front row beside Joe Sade, would you believe it, a VK Commodore. Looks like one of the cars from years gone by at Bathurst. With me in commentary, I've got Colin Bond, who's certainly one of the fellas that has a bit of Bathurst experience. And looking at these cars up the hill, Cole, what do you think of this last meeting at Amaroo?
Well, obviously, you know, it's a good category again. You know, these cars are very well prepared. And I just know Joseph, you know, got a great start. He got a fair bit of wheel spin off the start, and the car snaked a bit. And I thought the Commodore might have actually pipped him to the first corner. But he's in the lead. And I was noticing this car before. It handled extremely well. It's very low to the ground. It's been magnificently built by Joe. And he drives it very good as well.
Yeah, he certainly is hurrying along a little bit. He did 52 in qualifying. That's no mean time around here at all. Very quick time for that car, considering that he only did about 1 lap or 2 laps and got black flag for noise. And The problem with the noise regulations around here is that it is monitored by the EPA. They have a microphone in the centre of the circuit that's connected to a noise meter, and if we exceed the noise levels, we get a fine, the drivers get into a fair bit of trouble, and it's not much fun for anyone. So you've got to spend a lot of effort and time to get these cars quiet enough to comply, and that applies at most circuits around the country these days, not just Amaroo Park, believe it or not. And again, looking at this Commodore, it's a great looking machine around here, big V8, muscling its way around Amaroo Park. And again, just behind him, another very interesting car, which is Bill Harris in a Commodore with a Chrysler motor. So leading these little fire-breathing Mazdas with their rotary. So there's quite a combination of cars around here. Sports sedans is a category where obviously you can make almost any sort of a combination to come up with a very interesting weapon, Cole.
Well, it does. It allows the person also, you know, if they're a little bit engineering technical themselves, they can, you know, like the first car coming around there, it's a Fiat car, which is very nicely built, but obviously it's not the Fiat motor in it, so he's put a Mazda motor in it, and a lot of the cars running in sports sedans, you know, Mazda seem to do very well, the little Wankel engine, and their 2 or 3 rotors, they make a lot of horsepower, they're quite light, and they rev quite freely, you know, make an ideal engine, I guess, for this category of motor car.
Yeah, I guess it is a fairly cheap way to get good, reliable horsepower. The only trouble is, I guess, they don't even look like a proper engine. It's a bit like a 20-litre drum with a spark plug stuck in the side of it, but they definitely do the job. And although they're a bit noisy, you can certainly get some horsepower out of the things. And I know most of the guys that run them that really, you know, they'd like to see something a little bit different in them. But the rotary engine certainly does the job. And I think you can look at some of the cars. I think Rick Shaw has a business where he does a lot of work on rotary engines. And he does a lot of preparation on these cars, and they get phenomenal horsepower out of them. It's just that they don't quite fit into the normal description of something that we're used to, like a big V8 with pistons and things that you can relate to. So, yeah, Cole, but they obviously work, don't they?
Well, they do. I think they're reliable. That's the other good thing about them, you know, and the fact that they're light. But I must admit, I've never actually raced one. I've driven one on the road, of course, but never actually raced one of those sort of cars. But no, sports sedan, it's a great category. You can modify them, as we said. You can put bigger wheels on it. You can actually move the engine around. There are limits, of course, like any category, to what you can do. But the Mazdas are certainly a car that people seem to want to modify or change and put the motors into something else, you know, in this particular category, probably more than any other that I can think of.
Yeah, I remember seeing, actually, there's one of the O'Brien aluminium cars, I think, and the looks of that, there's very distinctive green and gold colours on it. Ron O'Brien would be happy that at least one of his cars out here, because I think the rest of them had to head off for a championship round at South Australia, Malala. I think he took about 5 of them over there. So O'Brien aluminium is certainly putting a lot into the sports sedan category, and it's good to see at least one of the representatives is here. And again, looking at these Mazdas, it reminds me of Alan Moffat when he used to drive the RX-7 here, and some of the local guys. And when Colin was talking about a little bit before off screen, saying how it was home territory and local people at Amaroo had a huge advantage. And I remember when Alan Moffat turned up here in an RX-7, Terry Shield had one, Bobby Morris had one, and there was some unbelievable racing because everyone wanted to beat the works car, the factory back team, I guess you'd call it, with Alan Moffat. And the local guys certainly didn't give anything away, and most of the time managed to either put on a good fight or knock him off, and which was good to see. And that was one thing that Amaroo certainly did. That was a driver's circuit, and you could have some very, very close racing because it's a great equaliser, Cole.
Yeah. Well, you see Joe Sad again going up over the top in his little Mazda. Looks like he's cleared out a bit now, and he's got this race well in hand. The car just sits so nicely on the road, you know, going around the corner. He just passes the cars when he wants to. And I guess that's the critical thing about the whole thing, is having a nice amount of power, the weight ratio right, and then the balance of the car right. You know, again, we've got the O'Brien car here, you know, chasing. Well, that could be anything. It's a Tirana, obviously, on steroids. But I think that's the trouble with these sort of motor cars. When they start modifying, putting big mud guards on the big fat wheels, everything else, sometimes a little bit tricky to find out what sort of motor car it is. But no, they're having a great dice, the two of them, obviously, and they're two different motor cars. One would be a 6-cylinder car, as the O'Brien car was going to dive down the inside, but we didn't see the finish of that. As Joe goes up over the top again, as we said before, very much in the lead now, and I'd say he's got this race pretty well to his liking.
When you said that Tirana looked like it could have been anything, it just reminded me of a car that Harry Firth built that I think you drove at one stage, one of the very early sports sedans that looked pretty much like that, Cole. I don't know if it might be the same car. It had a Formula 5000 engine in it from memory and a pretty lightweight shell. But yeah, I guess when you get some panels on some of these cars, they almost could be anything, but they certainly are effective and they get the job done. And that's the main thing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the O'Brien car's actually got past the Tirana. You know, obviously, you know, it did dive down the inside, and whether it was that corner or the one after. But we've got Joe Said again coming around onto the main straight. There mustn't be too many more laps left in this race now. But, I mean, this is a very pretty motor car, and you can see with the skirts and the front spoiler, to stop the air getting under the motor car, to keep it sort of stuck to the ground. And the car is handling. I mean, it's obviously handling much better than anything else in the race, and that's why it's out in the front.
Yeah, a lot of development's gone into that car over the years. We look at the Tirana versus looks like a Ford Capri, heavily modified Ford Capri with a Frank sign on the side there. That car has certainly looks to be very similar to one of the cars that was raced here by, again, I think Alan Moffat had a Ford Capri with Cologne Capri. It looks like it's modified on that, and again, that Tirana that we're talking about seems to be very similar to the one that the Holden race team built. So there's been some interesting combinations that Ford and General Motors have put together to run in sports sedans as a bit of a, I guess, a semi-works effort to test out a few projects that they might have in mind for later on. Or maybe it's just a temporary aberration that someone had at the time in the design department, and let's see what happens if we put a V8 in something that normally has a 4-cylinder in it. But whatever the situation is, they evolve into sports sedans and they make some really exciting racing. Current sports sedans, of course, when you look at the level 1 machines that I was talking about that went over to Adelaide for the championship round recently, they've got carbon fibre chassis, they've got the latest technology. They're almost little Formula 1 cars with a body on them because they've got rocker arm suspensions, aerodynamics that really do work. And some of these things really develop into very, very quick little motor cars. And that car on screen there, I believe it would have, well, picking a wheel up as it crests the hill, maybe could do a little bit more chassis work. And again, you can see on the front, it's got the O'Brien aluminium sticker. As we go back to Joe Said, and that car just looks so stable and barely picking wheels up anywhere. It does hop a little bit. It seems to be fairly stiff, probably because it's so light. But I remember Joe was running this car as a Fiat 124 back when I was running a sports sedan in 1984, thereabouts, around Amaroo. And I think I was racing against the same car. And I think Joe has just developed that car ever since. And it is such a brilliant little piece of machinery and something that's very effective around here at Amaroo Park, Cole.
Well, it is, and he's obviously come out on the last race too to notch up a win. You know, it's going to be a great win for him, of course, because as I said, everybody wanted to be here today and obviously run the last race meeting and to win a race at the last race meeting, your name goes down in history and that's it. Certainly nobody else is going to come along afterwards. But no, this race now is just sort of winding down to the end. There's a few cars struggling to get to the finish. We've just got a bit of a problem there with one of the Commodores. But this old XU1 is still going. We've got the O'Brien car. I just noticed it going in the pits before, but it must have come in and gone back out again, so there was nothing any major wrong with it. But
yeah, it's a big effort to try and finish here at Amaroo because, as you're saying before, this is the last race meeting that will be held at the track. And the last time these guys will ever have the opportunity to work round through the loop and go through some of these tricky little corners. And I guess they're not going to spend any time in the pits if the race is still going, even though they're probably not going to finish up in the top few. But whenever you've got the opportunity, you can say, yes, I drove at the last Amaroo Park race meeting and I did pretty well at it. And Joe coming round onto the main straight and looking for that last lap board. There it is, being held out as he crosses the line. He's only got one more lap to go. And this will be a very, very emotional win for Joe because he's been racing for quite a while. He spent a lot of time here at Amaroo Park, made a bit of a name for himself in the sports sedan category, and waves to the cameraman actually as he comes down, or the guy on the flag point. And Joe's obviously got everything well under control, very relaxed drive from him. And Cole, I guess it's nice to be in that position when you're in front in a race.
Well, it certainly is, you know, and I know that he puts a lot of effort into the car. He actually even worked for me at one stage, and he will be, you know, quite pleased with this particular race win.
Actually, one guy that's worked for me is Anthony Duff in that little XU1 that's just coming up. It's got a lot of tape in it. They had, believe it or not, an accident in the pit area with a truck. Anthony's managed to get it to the finish, and Joe Said, as he comes up to take the checkered flag, on what will be the last opportunity that he'll ever drive around Amaroo Park, as he crosses the finish line and takes the checkered flag for a fantastic win. And in second place, we've got Eric Wilson in the Commodore. Then we've got Bill Harris in that fantastic combination of a Commodore. And Bill Nabham, a guy that spent a lot of time in Mazdas, brings up the rest of the field in his Mazda RX-3.
Well, regardless of what track they're at, the HQ's always turned it on, and Peter Green kept the tradition rolling with this little incident at Amaroo. Over the top of the hill, a little bit too hot, and he's in trouble. Ooh, a nasty one. Let's take a look at that on the replay. You see the tail steps out, the car wants to go to the left, but there's a right turn, and in she goes hard. Well, naturally, you wouldn't be happy with yourself. What's the excuse, Pete?
We were out there, we were going pretty well. We're in fourth, catching up to third pretty regularly, and I basically stuffed up. I'm too hard up over the top. Somebody put a right-hand corner in where I was going left.
Yeah, I can see the Black Stallion energy drink. By the way the door was slammed, I think a bit of that energy drink was put to use.
Yeah, it does help when you're driving to have a bit of energy behind you. Possibly we had a little bit too much in that event.
Welcome to Amaroo Park for what is the goodbye Amaroo Park meeting. Yes, the finale. Amaroo Park is closing, and HQs. What better way, Chris Holmes, could you have Amaroo Park and the home of HQ Racing?
Yeah, just looking at the grid marshal there, Gary Smith, forming a few people up. It's a very emotional time because we'll never ever see these cars on Amaroo Park track again. It is the last time that you'll see HQs go up the hill for the final time up over the crest on Bitchapave.
Well, the Hooters going, we've got Charlie DeQuino. He knows the pointy end of the field. He's on pole position. And Greg King. These two always work out very hard here around the tight and twisty Amaroo Park layout. Very sad day, Chris Holmes, because I suppose like everything else, it's a day when you see an Amaroo Park situation come to an end, and there's some very long faces around in the crowd.
Yeah, there are. There's a few long faces, but we've come out to enjoy the racing, and a lot of these guys have been trying extra hard and biffing cars and hitting the guardrails, and they say, well, this is the last chance to see if I can go through there flat or not. I might as well give it a big go.
And maybe the officials might be turning a bit of a blind eye and say, well, guys, put on a show, because these guys are always there hard and fast. They're only a 3-speed car, the 202 cubic inch engine. Some people call them the taxis. But I tell you what, you get to drive one of these cars, they get your attention very, very quickly.
Yeah, they've raced all over the place, the HQs. Remember seeing them for the first time on TV back in the days when Channel 7 used to have a lot of motorsport coverage. And I recall seeing them from, I think it was Tasmania, and I guess it was Mike Raymond doing some of the commentary. And I thought, who on earth would ever want to race a HQ? Next thing you know, everyone on the mainland had one, and we started putting a few races on for them at Amaroo in support of the touring cars, and one of them just hit the fence. Another one clipped the fence. Doesn't matter, guys. We're going to pull it down in another day or so. So go for your life.
Well, they're pushing hard and fast. It's very interesting because a lot of people have cut the mustard in HQs. I mean, people like Peter Hopwood, that's raced everything from open wheelers to sports cars. He had a go at HQs. I mean, Neville Haley, a young guy from Victoria, the current Australian champion. I mean, I think he's won everything in HQs. He's won Bathurst, IndyCar. He's won Western Australia. He's won the Victorian titles. I mean, he says to me that it all comes down to car preparation and having that small edge, and I suppose a brave heart, because you have to be very brave to drive one of these. But Charlie DeQuino, he's a brave guy. He's been driving Kiwis for a long time, and he says he loves it. It's cheap motor racing, but very much cut and thrust at the pointy end.
Yeah, it certainly is, and a wide range of people have driven these things over the years, and the amount of development that's gone into them, and the amount of time that people have put into making sure that they get the most out of them. You'd expect that they'd hit a plateau and they wouldn't go any quicker, but they do manage to squeeze a little bit more out of a HQ Holden around here. They're doing times just over a minute, not too much over a minute around here at Amaroo Park, and that's pretty respectable for something that's got a column shift.
Well, column shift or floor shift, there's still only 3-speed. We've got the dentist, or whatever he calls it, or the dentist. I mean, I'll tell you what, I think he's creating a little business for himself, bashing and crashing, moving the car around, sliding. But these cars have understeer on turn-in, oversteer on the way through, and it's really interesting when you look into the cabin from the commentary box and watch these guys literally manhandling these cars through what's called Mazda House Corner. It's why the name stuck there. I mean, it's the old notorious Mazda House, but probably one of the fastest corners on a motor racing circuit apart from Bathurst.
Yeah, it is. I went around there once in a sports sedan, the passenger side, with Frank Gardner bashing me on the knee saying, don't worry about my hands, look at my leg, and he's trying to show how we could go through there flat in fifth gear in a sports sedan. Certainly got my attention, I can tell you. And that was something I'll never forget.
Well, Frank Gardner was notorious for getting people's attention. The old fox, he used to sort of get people in the car like you, Holmesy, and as you said, he got your attention. But Greg King, he's got the 88 car going flat out up over Bitchapave Hill. He'll have a lump in the throat there, hard on the brakes. But Charlie DeQuino, the king of Kiwis, today at least, around the notorious loop, the Dunlop loop. Foot through the floor, it's a double apex corner. Let the car run out very wide on the ripple strips, and as we said, then it's flat out all the way. It's very hilly here at Amaroo Park. It doesn't actually look that hilly, but when you're here, you want to try walking around it. It's got lots of very sharp hills and drop-offs, and you can carry a lot of road speed through these corners.
Yeah, one of the tricks to this place is certainly on the section where you go over the crest of Bitchapave Hill, as they call it, down through the loop, which is downhill all the way, and you can build up quite a lot of speed. Get the Mazda corner, which is that fast right-hander we were talking about before. Then you've got one left-hander, and then this right-hand corner here known as stop corner, and that is a big heart starter because you come down that hill absolutely flat and nothing but a brick wall in front of you, and that really sorts the men from the boys.
Well, it's all about hard braking, and we've seen many a car at the stop-go corner go in there. We saw that terrible crash with Bosenjak in the Vodafone Porsche that got demolished there quite some time ago. But once again, the Dint Master, I'll tell you what, have a look at the car number 75. He's having a big go here. Like we said, he's trying to create some business, but push and shove, who cares? Whichever way you can push your car through the corner, it seems to work, and they all come out facing in the right direction. Yeah,
it is the last chance that I'll get to do it. As we said earlier, they are being reasonably, I suppose, contained about what they're doing. But this Mazda corner, as I mentioned before, very, very fast, flat in top gear, and then a big hard stop in the left-hander. It's one of the few left-handers on the circuit. And when you come into there, you find the tyres are feathered over one way, and as you go through the left-hander, the feathering of the tyres means they don't have an edge on the side you want to use. And you find that it goes on a left-hand corner a lot different to the way it goes around a right-hand corner, which is what the rest of the track is. So there are some little points around Amaroo that really do catch you unawares if you haven't done many laps around here.
Well, Holmesy, you're actually having a drive here today for the last meeting in the Invitation Sports Cars in your monster Porsche, so that should be fairly good. What do you think your chances might be?
Probably not too good at the moment because we don't have third gear. It was okay in the wet. We got pole position in the wet without third, but it does count in the dry. But we'll be lining up for a start at the last event, and making sure that at least I have a chance to say goodbye to Amaroo Park in a race car.
Fantastic. Well, these Kiwis once again spearing down through the circuit, up over the ripple strip, through Mazda House corner, with a 3-speed Holden gear change. It must be very difficult. I've driven these cars around Eastern Creek, and sometimes you've got to work out on the corner. Do you go back to second and rev the engine very hard, or do you short shift and go through in third? And that seems to be one of the secrets. But late on the brakes, coming down in a stop-go corner, broadside in the corner, car number 33, we've got O'Rourke, Peter O'Rourke. I tell you what, he's having a big move onto the main straight, but I think he's pushed himself out wide. But no, he's held the position. O'Rourke, he is one of these brave people that says, well, I suppose it's a green car. He's not superstitious, is he, Holmesy?
No, you've got to be a brave person to drive a green car. There is a lot of superstition about them. Some people have success. Lotus, of course, had green cars in the open wheeler days and brought them a lot of success, but there has been some degree of superstition about green race cars, and it's supposed to be a no-no. But I think maybe Dick Johnson had a few problems when he had a green Mustang a few years ago.
Yeah, well, I think all that superstitious stuff. I used to run with car number 13, and it didn't didn't affect me too much. But I suppose who cares? I mean, the green car, it stands out. It looks actually very good on television. And as you alluded to with Dick Johnson in the days of the Mustang, they look spectacular. But speaking of spectacular, we've got a couple of guys out there in the infield, turning the grass into lawn, doing the old Victor Mowers trick. Car number 98 with a P plate. I tell you what, the officials will be maybe asking a few questions just to say, why are you on the infield when the racing is done on the track?
Yeah, some of those officials too, I might add, have come from near and far to be at Amaroo for this event. There was one guy that I think his first ever race meeting was when the place opened in about 1967, and he was on flag point 7, and we had a written request from this marshal to be on the same flag point as he was at the very first race meeting. And these guys are probably not thinking about that too much as they go around and start to have a big dice, bit of panel bending and pushing and shoving.
Yeah, when you're right about the pushing and shoving, you've got O'Rourke in the green car, and is it Ratano or Reggiano? We're not sure. The Mutual Pools car, whichever way. He's in front. Blue is leading green, and these guys having a race within a race, and that's what HQ racing is all about. It's always tight, it's always close, and you've got races at the front, in the middle. It just really depends on how many dollars people are willing to throw at cars.
Yeah, there's a bit of incentive for these guys too. One of the guys you should be watching out for, car 77, Richard Mork. He is absolutely determined to be in the last race on the day, and you can see a bit more pushing and shoving, trying to find a bit of space as we head up the hill. And yeah, Morky says that he is going to be in the last race on the day. For those of you that might be wondering what will be the last race on the day, well, it's a butcher's picnic, and that means that the top 3 cars in every category are thrown in together for one race to see what's quickest. We'll have HQs, minis, sports sedans, you name it, it'll be there, but it's only for the top 3. So there's a fair bit of incentive for people to get into that last ever race.
Geez, I tell you what, Holmes, you'll have to watch out if you're there in the Porsche and you've got these HQs bounding around. They might want to take you out because these blokes here are putting a spectacular show. We've got O'Rourke, Reggiano, or Reg Tano, whichever it is. He's got the Mutual Pools car. He's on the mission down into Honda corner, the very tight, it'll be second gear, left-hand corner. But this car 33, I'll tell you what, he's bouncing off the ripple strips. He's bouncing off the Armco. He's having a ball. He's saying, well, Amaroo, it's the last meeting. Let's give the car a good workover. In through to stop-go corner. Look at this. Ratano, we'll call him. Sideways, covering the corner. Coming onto the main straight, the Mutual Pools rocket ship. Look at this. Car's touching and leaning. Is he going to miss the main straight? I tell you what, Holmesy, there's only a few mil in that Armco fence there.
There's not much room. They go side by side up the hill. It doesn't take much of a touch to launch someone up here either, because the cars get very light as they crest the left-hander over the crest of the hill, then flick back over to the right and get a line for the loop. But one of the things that's definitely going to be on their mind is brakes, because around about this time of a race, in a HQ race, they stop working. Well, at least the fronts do, because they get hot first, and then they only work on the back, and after a while the backs stop working, they go straight ahead. So they do have a few problems pulling these things up around here.
Well, look at that. Des Moy hung out to dry. He got the loop a little bit on the wrong side, got the car oversteering, big slide. He's got the tight line. Once again, pushed back another position. There's leading, there's touching. They're coming down to the stop-go corner. Have a look at this. We've got Borkham Hills removals. I'll tell you what, the only person he's going to remove is Des Moy on the outside, but no, car 62 down the inside, late braking. I cannot believe how late they can get a HQ to brake here at Amaroo Park Raceway.
Well, they don't work anymore, as I said. At that point, they don't have any brakes. They just flick them sideways, throw the old column shift up in the second, and hope for the best. And that's about the way you drive a HQ around Amaroo, I'm told.
Well, we've just looked down, and you've all the people that are on the pit wall that are cheering and carrying on, they actually move back. These cars are literally bouncing off the wall, and actually at the Armco fence, it moves quite a lot all the way down the full length of it. So the officials have actually said, hey everyone, you better move back a couple of metres, because these guys are going out in farewell style and bouncing the car off everywhere that Amaroo Park's got to on offer.
Yeah, well, they know that they're not going to be sent a bill to fix any Armco at the end of this weekend. It's all got to come down. The track has been sold, and the new owner will be putting some 5-acre blocks on here, and which is a pity, so for a racetrack, I guess. But there's progress, things move on, and the ARDC is now based at Eastern Creek Raceway.
Well, Gary Van Gestrel, car 75, the Dint Master, or the Dint Machine. I tell you what, he's out there and pushing and shoving. It's said it before, but look at this. Greg King, he is no match for Charlie DeQuino. He's in a class of his own here. And DeQuino, he's sort of got the lights on. He's coming up on the slow back marker saying, hey, get out of my way. I'm on a mission. I want to win this last race. As you alluded to before, Chris, that the top 3, I believe, are going to go to the Butcher's Picnic. So we'll have 3 Kiwis, Minis, Porsches, you name it. So no wonder they call it the Butcher's Picnic, because I think it'll be almost anything goes.
Oh yeah, it's a run what you brung, and winner take all. There was some possibility at some stage that we were going to have some open wheelers in as well, but I don't think we would have got that through cams. But it is a butcher's picnic, and whatever you have.
Well, the Highland Heritage Estate car of Charlie d'Aquino with King behind. The headlights on, as we mentioned. He comes onto the main straight. Speaking of a heritage estate, I tell you what, he's kept it on the island compared to some. But look at that, a brilliant result for Charlie d'Aquino, followed by Greg King in second position, and those guys are ecstatic. I tell you what, they've gone out, they've taken the first two positions, and look at this, Charlie's waving him up to say, what do you reckon? We've made the finish, and as we said, it's a bit of a sad day when the flag comes out, but as you mentioned, Chris, that all that racing will be moving across to Eastern Creek Raceway.
Back at Amaroo Park, yes, the last Amaroo Park. You'll never see super minis driving around this circuit again. Just taking a look at the grid, we got Paul Attard on pole position with a 58.5, Peter Crocker beside him on a 58.8. Should be a good race. With me in commentary is John Cummins. John, you've probably seen a few minis driving around racetracks around the country.
Just a few.
Yeah, I guess so. And tell me, your first time at Amaroo Park, when would that have been?
That was the very first meeting, Amaroo Country Club, and Graham Howard and I sat up with a field telephone halfway up the hill, and I don't know how they relayed it all, but there was no control tower, and we just sat on a box and...
obviously worked. So, okay, looking at the grid now as Paul Attard takes off. Beautiful start up the hill, really getting into it. A few minis, a gaggle of minis, I suppose you'd call them, all over the place, four abreast as they crest picture pave. The good thing about minis, they're so small, you can fit a lot of them into a couple of tight corners.
You certainly can. And what about the development of these super minis from being Appendix J cars originally to twin cams, and they've put Cortinas in them? We even had a bloke from Newcastle that put a 179 in it, north and south.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that thing, with the Holden motor in it and huge front wheels. It was an interesting device, but I don't know if it was any quicker than one of these cars would be.
I've got banned, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, well, they tend to ban lots of things in motorsport. Usually things that are a lot of fun, innovative or too quick, but I guess that's the way it works. Okay, looking around, coming into stop corner, the way some of these things put their power down for a front-wheel drive car, very unusual. I think they just stop and wheel spin and wouldn't get anywhere, but they certainly do get their way around Amaroo Park quickly.
They certainly do, and all the cars with funny boxes on the front, well, they're the ones that have got all the tricky carburettors, that Webers that face forward, or maybe it's a special head. The development of these cars, it's just never stopped. Whoa! And the development is certainly needed on car 18, which is Brian Burrell.
Yeah, he's P-plate on the back, probably having one of his first races. The P-plate system, for viewers that may not be aware, it's a system where you can it basically warns the other drivers that you're probably only having one of your first few. Although a lot of guys that are on P-plates come from go-karts, so you might find that they excuse me, have actually had a fair bit of driving experience before they get to something like a Mini.
And quite often beat some of the professionals.
That's right, yeah. I mean, a lot of these young guys certainly are quick these days, and it doesn't take very long for them to show that bravery counts for a lot on a racetrack, and a bit of experience can be gained in go-karts before you find your way onto a track. But again, looking at the run up the hill, Minis seem to be leaving a fair bit of gap out to the wall. I think maybe they're a little bit afraid of getting too close to that Armco coming onto the straight.
Well, you couldn't really blame them for that.
No, it'd probably do a fair bit of damage to a front-wheel drive Mini if you clip the wall there. And,
but the HQs don't care, they just use the door handles as they go around there.
Absolutely. And again, just looking at the exit here on the loop, car 21 there making a little bit of room for himself. That's John Wakefield, who's really squeezing a little bit of progress out of that Mini down through Mazda. Great little dice here, and you've got to say that Mini racing, I suppose, over the years has brought a few stars out. I think some time ago, in fact yesterday, I was talking to Barry Jones, who manages Jeff Morgan's team, the Vodafone Porsche team. He also managed, the Mazda factory effort at Bathurst, which they won, I think, twice now. And Barry had his first race at Amaroo Park in, would you believe, a Mini.
Don Holland was another early bloke that modified Minis, got one out to about 1400. I don't think it was quite legal, but that never stopped Don.
Yeah, I suppose over the years we've seen some innovative things with Minis. fiberglass roofs were a big deal, which I think evolved into a fastback, what they call it, the buckle modification.
The buckle lightweight and the mini, and then there was a couple of English ones as well.
Yeah, there's certainly been some changes and some evolution to mini racing, and they turn on a good show, although it's interesting that these days they don't seem to be picking up the inside rear wheel as much. Watch a fair bit of understeer, oversteer, left and right lock as he tries to gather it up there. But years ago, you used to see him cock that inside rear wheel way off the ground. It looked like a dog looking for a tree to...
the Foley Mountain dices would be a pretty good example of that back in Warwick Farm days.
That's right, yeah. You used to see them nose to tail with their little hind legs cocked in the air.
Yep.
This one's an interesting looking thing. Look at the width of the track on it. And again, this is our pole man, race leader, Paul Attard. The front is extremely wide track, and the rear is very, very narrow. I'd say you could probably pick the back of it up with one hand. Camo, what do you reckon?
Oh, I'd reckon, yeah, they're very, very light, and I don't know, I just reckon they're very brave drivers, some of these guys, and no modification is too outrageous on a mini.
Yeah, I can see that. But whatever that combination was, it certainly works. And again, we've got a few different combinations here. Just looking at Brian Burrell there, who's leading that other car number 2 there.
Ken McCann.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contrast because...
Whoa, we got another one.
Oh, that's a dangerous place to stop.
And who's that? That's Stephen Evans.
Yeah, good to see Steve having a run there, although I was a bit concerned being sideways across the loop there as he was. It's the worst place you could possibly park sideways because it's a blind approach. You come over the crest of the hill, as we were talking earlier, absolutely flat. And to find someone parked sideways in front of you is not a very happy situation.
The only thing about these minis, they're just about square.
Yeah, I think they're just as happy going sideways as they are going in a straight line. But going back to some of the contrasts we're looking at, combinations, we see these things with a really wide front track, a narrow rear track, others that are a little bit more conventional, and the end result, surprisingly enough, isn't that much different. They all seem to be lapping reasonably close together in dices, despite the wide variety of modification. Yeah, speaking of that, I suppose, there'd be a number of drivers that, after learning a bit about modifying these minis, went on to do other things. Maybe John Leffler comes to mind?
Yes, certainly, and he was, of course, a Gold Star champion a bit later on after moving out from minis, and that's a fairly big jump.
Yeah, I guess, what did he get into after minis? Was it Formula 5000?
Yes, he got into Formula 5000s, and then he had some health problems, unfortunately, but a very popular bloke and a very good friend to just about everybody in the sport.
Yeah, I suppose there's a few. There's another one that comes to mind, Phil Barnes, that used to... started driving a mini, a really tall, lanky guy. I think you'd
how
wonder.
He ever tucked himself in, I don't know.
You'd wonder, wouldn't you? And then what did he run? A GTHO, I think, at Bathurst.
That's right.
And going through Don Holland, as you mentioned before, and Phil Barnes that we mentioned, and again going back to Barry Jones, he really dominated in minis for quite a while, and then got into Mazda RX-7s. So I guess there's quite a number of people that had found that a mini really is a fairly unconventional thing, but it really gives you a good footing to go moving into something else. Just watching John Wakefield there, a little bit of smoke coming out the back of it. I suppose to come out the back of a mini, it's there's not much down there mechanically that would be throwing oil out of it.
Only an exhaust pipe.
Yeah, it's well, oil out the exhaust is definitely a worry, but it's a distinct possibility. Yeah, there's a fair bit coming out of it. Let's hope it makes race distance on what is, as we've said a few times, the last Amaroo Park event. Car 28 there, really mean looking
Tim
thing.
Tritton, yes, he was really operating on a very funny wide outside line, but it didn't seem to worry him at all.
No, it's extremely low even for a mini. That shot, I don't think I've seen a mini that low before. I don't know if the belly was dragging on the ground. Maybe it makes a bit of difference around here, but you'd think you want to have all the rubber on the deck rather than the belly dragging on the deck around here.
Probably trying to find the groove with the sump.
Yeah, something like that. The tram track, it's a new dimension to the idea of tram tracking around the place. Just again, going back to this, some of the varieties, it's really got me beat. Now, there's a little one. Car number 2, I think that was. That Peter Crocker. No, sorry, that's not Peter Crocker. That'd be Ken McCann. And looking at Ken McCann's car, very conventional, very narrow, hardly any flares at all. And look what's in front of. Another beast-looking thing, huge wheels. And
Peter Wilson.
Peter Wilson's car. Peter would be sitting there thinking, now, hang on, this thing in front has got narrow wheels, doesn't seem to have much flare, and Hang on a minute, maybe I got my sums wrong here because after all, he is leading it. You've got to ask the question, haven't you?
You certainly have. And it's just a clubman just going around very quickly. And it's one of the 1,000 class cars too, because that's proved very popular of recent years. The 1,000 class, not quite as highly modified as the sports sedans or the 1275s, and it does give a starting point for competitors to get into racing a car fairly cheaply, and the 1000cc Mini is pretty reliable.
Yeah, and looking at Paul Haddard again, what a great little machine this is. Just brilliant car, steaming ahead, no opposition at all in sight as he starts to wind his way through, lapping some of the traffic on what will be the last Amaroo Park race meeting ever. It is unfortunate, but it's one of those things. I guess we move on. The ARDC is now based and focused at Eastern Creek, and I suppose progress is inevitable, and we've got to focus on making that a success now, as we certainly had a success out of Amaroo Park over the earlier years, and it's a shame, but we're moving on, and things have got to progress. And just looking at some of these minis, I think when you look at the progression that we've had in motorsport over the years, and you think that these cars used to race at Bathurst, and we've got Bathurst coming up for the 2-litre event and then the V8 event later on. But looking at these sorts of cars, going back to the days when they were brand new and they were racing and winning at Bathurst. I suppose, John Cummins, you'd probably have some fond memories of minis at Mount Panorama?
Oh, most certainly. Bob Holden and Frank Manich, and that's just a couple I can think of off the top of my head. Of course, Bob is a perennial driver. He's never given up, no matter what. He's been concentrating on Fords for the last 20-odd years, but, well, he won Bathurst in a Mini, so you can't do much better than that.
And Bob Holden's still driving. I saw him at Oran Park recently in a BMW, and he's still driving competitively, and occasionally hops in and shows some of the young guys how it's done, and to see that Bob is racing after starting again in a Mini. See, there must be something about Minis. There's a lot of guys that have moved on once you start to think about it. We're now talking about a Bathurst winner that started in a Mini. And he actually went on to drive BMWs, as we mentioned. Looking at a guy that's got a big future ahead of him, Paul Haddard runs up to stop corner here at Amaroo Park for the last time. Very emotional for a lot of drivers. A couple of guys were almost in tears earlier on, thinking this is the last chance they've ever got to do a few laps at Amaroo Park. Paul Haddard comes up to the checkered flag for the last time that we'll ever see minis racing at Amaroo Park. Fine win for him, and he really did deserve it. Really showed the rest of them a clean set of heels. Yeah, the last ever Amaroo Park, we got Paul Haddard, winner of the Super Mini race. Paul, a Mini around Amaroo, be a bit of a handful?
Yeah, it's a bit of a handful, but quite a few years ago I used to do a fair bit of racing in them, so it's sort of a home away from home for me, so it's quite a nice thing to drive, I believe anyway.
Now, the last ever Amaroo Park, there's been a few lap records broken today, and a few that are going to stand for a very long time. How do you think the Mini record's going to go?
Well, at the moment it's 56.6, and I did a 57 neat in my last race, and I'm really hanging out to get that 56.6. It did it on Friday, so I really want to give it my best shot to beat it this time.
Well, it is the last ever chance. I guess you'll be giving it a big go in this one.
No, I certainly will. It's a shame to see it go. It's a real driver's circuit. I really enjoy coming down here, and it's a shame to see it go, but yeah, I'll be giving it a big one.
Welcome to Amaroo Park for the Goodbye Amaroo Park race meeting. That's right, this is the last time we'll be seeing cars racing at Amaroo Park. Pole position for the Club Cars Trophy race. Pole position, Cole Matthews with a 56.07. Beside him, Mark Phelan, local boy from Kellyville, 56.72. Pretty close times. With me in commentary, Colin Bond. What do you think of these club cars around here?
Well, they're very good, actually, I must admit. They're a club car, they're fairly cheap to run, not too much modifications allowed, no racing tyres, and it's always really good close racing, Chris.
Oh, yeah, really close. They hop up the hill. We got Phelan on the inside, and on the outside we got Cole Matthews. And, boy, they're getting swamped as they go up the hill. We've got cars everywhere, club cars all over the place. Cole Matthews finds himself back in third position, and out in the lead we've got Mark Phelan. Beautiful start up the hill, got himself in the right position, and cars everywhere diving around down the loop. We've got some Mazdas of all description. I think even a 1600, probably got a Mazda engine in it, I'd say. Cars everywhere filing down here. Even Richard Mork, I just saw some of the cars are in here. Everyone wants to go at this last Amaroo.
I must admit, the Mazda seem to be the car to have in this particular series. they're obviously dominating the racing, and from the RX-7s right through the old RX-3s and what have you. Basically, they're all good motor cars, and we just got to manoeuvre now, trying to go down the outside, obviously coming to stop-go corner. It's fairly critical coming onto the straight. You can't come onto the straight too aggressive. I bet these guys have tried.
Yeah, that's certainly having a big go up the straight for the first time. And again, I mentioned before, they've got also the Commodore in there, we've got a Falcon, we've got RX-7s everywhere. This category, they call it club cars, but when you look at them, Cole Matthews' car there just on screen, looks a bit of a touch there coming into the loop. And some of these cars look like they've been built by the HRT. Honestly, the standard of workmanship and the amount of work that goes into what they loosely call a club car, they certainly have a fair bit of effort that goes into these cars, Cole.
Sure, I think like everybody these days, the preparation that goes into all the motor cars is a credit to the guys, obviously, that to get out here. As I said before, it is a fairly cheap formula. Not that motor race is cheap these days, but it's a formula that if you really like to compete at motorsport at this type of level, it's supposed to be designed to let the club guy come along, have a bit of a race, have a bit of fun. And obviously it's not very expensive. We've got a bit sideways in the background there. I think that's number 6.
Yeah, that's
Harry Squires.
Yeah, Squires really getting into it too. There's been good action going on. It was Lou Iezzi and Ian Freeman there that are really getting into it. And up the outside, inside over the crest of the hill at Bitchapave, that's Ian Freeman. He's tell you what, he's putting in a pretty good effort in this thing. It looks like a very quick little car. And to make a move like that over the crest of the hill at Bitchapave here at Amaroo Park, Cole, I think you've probably had a few goes at that in the Sierra days, I think.
Well, all sorts of cars, I think, Chris. Obviously it's a good passing place if you can get up on the outside going over the top, because it puts you on the inside for the coming down through the right-hander at the top. And there is a good passing manoeuvre there. We just saw one, very nice place. But no, these cars are very closely matched. No one's really bolting away, and it's very good close racing.
Yeah, called club cars, as I said, and a lot of people probably wonder what club cars are really all about. I guess probably the best way to sum it up is saying that it is a starting point for motor racing. You can get into it reasonably cheaply. They're on radial tyres, or radial road type tyres. They're not on slicks or racing slicks, and it does give you the opportunity to start in racing and get into something that's a reasonably quick car fairly cheaply. Just over the crest of the hill then was John Paul Ballard in car 68 on a P plate, for example, and this is one of his first races. The guy's running up reasonably front running car, and I suppose Amaroo is a circuit that certainly develops some driving skills, and people that manage to start out in something, if they can master Amaroo Park, they usually find they go well at most other tracks.
Sure. The P plate just means that he's only just got his licence, and obviously you do a few races and you put a P plate on. I think this guy should have had one as well.
Yes. I don't know if you should criticise the driver until we see exactly how he finished up in that position. That was like car 37, I think, which would have been Steve McClintock. I don't know if he's any relation to the McClintock that used to race Clubmans here many, many years ago. Could be. And that car looked like it was pretty heavily in the wall. I don't know how he managed to do it, but one of the things we have found here at Amaroo Park on this race meeting, the last race meeting here for these cars, or for any cars at Amaroo Park, one thing that we have seen during the weekend is people having a really big go, because the general consensus around with the drivers is, well, if I'm going to try and get through that corner flat, this is the last chance I'm going to have, so I think I'll try it.
It looks like, Chris, when you see him, he's gone straight ahead there off, look, as though he's come down, locked a brake and just gone straight into the wall, but maybe he got banged by another car or was trying to do an overtaking manoeuvre down the outside, so we can't be too critical of the guy.
Yeah, it is very difficult down there, because that's one place when you lock it up, you've got to get back off the brake so you regain the steering, and the big temptation is you see the wall coming up and you stay on the brake pedal, and before you know it, you're in all sorts of trouble. Going back now, looking at the cars heading up the main straight, one person we haven't seen for a while is Phelan, and the other one's Cole Matthews, because they've just bolted, they've disappeared. The person we're looking at now is Lou Iezzi, and he's in that little group there with John Paul Ballard and again Ian Freeman. They're having such a great little dice that obviously we've forgotten about the leaders. They've bolted, and these guys are just getting into it and really having a good race. You can see a white spot just going down into the left-hander there. That looks like it's Cole Matthews, and Phelan's around there somewhere. So that just gives you an idea of the lead that the others have got over this tight little group.
Well, just looking at old Harry Squire at the back of this lot, the car looks a bit older, obviously modelled than the cars in front of him. He's driving it very well, getting it sideways all the time. It's a little bit taily, but he's managing to stay with them. Oops, there he goes again. He's certainly giving it plenty coming onto the straights.
Yeah, definitely a bit more tail-out attitude as they side-by-side run up the hill onto the kink. Big move up on the inside there. John Paul's just managed to hang on to it. See the tail coming out as they go through the kink. Pretty fast part of the circuit there too, I'd say, Cole.
It is. I think he's using the whole road to make sure that he stays in front, you know. But we've got another one just sneaking down the inside, and it's obviously the place to be. You don't want to be out on the outside there.
Yeah, that's out on the outside through on the exit of the loop. A lot of people have come to grief big time through there. Definitely not the place to be. Very fast section here too, looking at Mazda corner they used to call it. I think it's probably still called Mazda. We tend to stick to the old names. And Mazda corner with this little group of rotary engine cars all over the place. And they're really having a good run here. Just looking at Squires again. Let's see what he does into stop corner. He certainly came out of it pretty sideways the last couple of times. Here he is. Plenty of opposite lock early. They're into it now. Little short straight. They really have a lot of fun here today.
There goes our leader up Bitch Pave anyway, over the top. You know, it looks like he's got a clear lead now at this stage anyhow, not really being pressured by anybody from behind.
Yeah, that's, as I said, that was Mark Phelan. And he runs a couple of cars actually. I think he's got a turbo Mazda as well, and this lightweight version that he's recently been running also. And Mark is a guy that certainly seems to have a lot of time on his hands to go motor racing. I don't know where he finds the money to do it. Or maybe it's a very successful and very efficiently run business that he has, but either that or he charges too much, I don't know. But anyway, looking back here, we got this little dice once again. Cars, they're coming out through some of the slower traffic now, and this really does sort people out around Amaroo, I guess. Bondi, you'd certainly know what happens when you get up in a bit of traffic around here.
Sure. Plus, the other thing is, too, you're noticing that his cars are sliding a bit more than what they were at the beginning of the race, and it's because the tyres they're using. You know, if they're running on race tyres, they've got a lot more grip, of course, you know, and the tyres seem to have more grip for the whole distance of the race. As these tyres, being a road-type tyre, get a lot more heat into them, and they just start building up pressure, and they start losing a bit of the traction they had at the beginning, and consequently, that's why you're seeing these cars slide a fair bit now. But I think it's great, you know, to see these things sliding around. You know, you get bored these days. Some of the cars have got so much grip and they go around the corner so fast, but it's great watching these guys, you know, and they're having a lot of fun out there too, you know, correcting the slides and braking and trying to brake late, you know, when these sort of tyres, locking up brakes and wheels and so on, and they're really all having a bit of fun and having a go.
Yeah, they're definitely having a go as they come down to the loop. We got Graham Shea and the little Mazda Compeller right behind in the Escort. Cole, they're having a big go here.
It looks, gee whiz, their Escort's done a great job there avoiding Peter spinning, and the Holden's come through too. Nobody else has collected him, which has been very good driving actually on their behalf.
Yeah, just talking about a bit of action, people having a go, and it all unfolded. We had the Capella go out wide, and the Escort managed to miss him. There's a big shuffle up here, and Marty Miller and the Holden made up a few spots along the way. And again, up the hill, we got John Paul Ballard. It looks like someone's thrown a can of yellow paint, or maybe they tripped over it after they just finishing painting the car blue, but it looks spectacular. It certainly comes up well on TV. And again, look at Squires, the tail out around here. Bondi, what do you think of that? Bring back a few memories?
Well, it does. I mean, I've been impressed with it because obviously the car hasn't got a lot of zot in a straight line compared to the ones he's racing with, but he's certainly picking them up around the corners. You know, now we've got an Audi going up the hill. I haven't seen it in the race before.
That looks like KB's old road car. I don't know if it's the four-wheel drive version or not. I tell you what, that'd be a pretty handy thing around here.
Would be.
And that Escort again, that's not one of your old rally cars, is it?
I don't know, it looks too straight actually. He was getting a little bit wide there, but the Audi, it's a different, it's a Quattro, so it's definitely a four-wheel drive Quattro. I don't know whether it's turbocharged or not, you know, I don't know too much about it actually. It's driven by Peter, is it Bartlett or something? Gosh, maybe.
could be a relative. Like I said, it might be KB's old road car. Anyway, John Paul Ballard crests the hill at Bitcher Pay for one of the last times he'll ever get the opportunity to crest that hill and fire off down into the loop, the Dunlop loop as it used to be called. And again, going back, we've got Mark Phelan heading up the hill on what would appear to be the last lap. I think I saw the last lap board just out there before, and tell you what, they're
closing up.
We got a bit, Cole Matthews, I just really caught me by surprise because 1 minute we had a huge lead out in front, and we got another one go off. Who's that? That looks like Ian Freeman that we had having a big dice early on, finally thrown it away. Last lap, Cole Matthews absolutely throwing everything at Phelan. Cole got a very bad start, finished up behind a few people, locking the brakes up. Now that's what you do, Cole, you get back off again and get the steering up. That way you don't go straight ahead into the wall.
Absolutely.
Coming down into stop corner, we've got Mark Phelan, certainly having a little glance in his mirrors there to make sure that Matthews stays behind him. And they come out onto the short little straight. Cole's got plenty of power on early, looks like he's going to get a good run onto the straight. Don't know if they're going to cross the line side by side. I think he might make it. This is a big lunge as Cole crosses the line just behind Mark Phelan. Unbelievable finish that time.
Surely was. One more lap and I think he would have had him.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he was thinking because he certainly made a lot of ground. And Phelan takes out the Club Cars Trophy race here at Amaroo Park for the Goodbye Amaroo meeting. And second was Cole Matthews. And in third place, we got Lou Iezzi, who really did well to finish up in the top 3 at this last Amaroo Park meeting. Mark Phelan, winner of the, the club car race, the trophy race. Indeed. Congratulations, last ever Amaroo. What are your feelings?
Well, I think it's been one of the best run meetings I've certainly been to. Chris, the stewards and all the officials have done a great job, and I've certainly enjoyed myself, I can tell you that.
You haven't been racing that long. Your first race at Amaroo Park, do you remember what you're in?
It was a Mazda, it was an RX-7, and certainly it wasn't up at the pointy end of the field, I can assure you of that.
Well, certainly changed things for you a little bit this last event. You actually won, and congratulations once again, Mark Phelan.
Thanks, Chris.